Okay, picture this. It's 1951, right in the heart of Moscow. A British intelligence technician is scanning the radio waves near the heavily guarded American embassy, and he hears something that should be scientifically impossible. A ghost signal. Welcome to this explainer on an absolute locked-door espionage mystery that totally defied the known laws of physics, baffled British intelligence for years, and came to be known as the 50-year bug. See that building? That's Spaso House. It's the U.S. ambassador's ultra-secure residence in Russia. So this young MI5 technician named Peter Wright detects a crystal-clear audio signal broadcasting directly from the ambassador's private study. But here is the truly terrifying part. When they rushed in and literally tore the room apart looking for the bug, they found nothing. Zero power sources, no hidden wires, no dead batteries. The room was completely clean of electronics, yet somehow it was actively broadcasting the most sensitive American diplomatic secrets straight out into the Moscow streets. Section 1, the Trojan Horse. So how in the world is this even possible? We are literally looking at the ultimate locked room mystery here. 7 years. The craziest part to me isn't just the tech, it's that this wasn't some quick weekend eavesdropping operation. This impossible device sat there, totally undetected, for 7 uninterrupted years. That means 4 successive U.S. ambassadors, the very architects of the Cold War, were just sitting in their private study, spilling their unvarnished, highly classified secrets, and Moscow was silently listening to every single word. Which brings us to the huge, glaring question, right? How on earth do you transmit audio across a major city without any power? I mean, every listening device in human history required either wires or batteries. How could any surveillance device function for nearly a decade without a single power source? Well, the answer is a brilliantly executed Trojan horse. Let's rewind to August 1945, right at the end of the war. A carefully vetted group of Soviet schoolchildren from a pioneer camp presented U.S. Ambassador Leon Theremin with this beautifully carved wooden replica of the Great Seal of the United States. It was pitched as this genuine, heartwarming gift of friendship. Theremin graciously accepted it and hung it proudly in the absolute most secure room in Spaso House, his private study. And easily fooled the absolute finest counter-surveillance sweeps of the era because, well, it was just a solid piece of wood. Or at least, so they thought. Section 2, the kidnapped genius. Because to figure out how this piece of wood was actually a weapon, we really need to look at the incredibly bizarre and honestly tragic human drama behind its invention. Take a look at the wildly jarring life of Leon Theremin. Back in 1927, this guy was an absolute celebrity in Manhattan. He literally invented the theremin, that famous, eerie sci-fi musical instrument you play by waving your hands in the air without actually touching it. He was performing at Carnegie Hall, mingling with New York high society, doing work with RCA. But fast forward to 1938, and he suddenly vanishes. He was kidnapped by Soviet agents, ripped right out of his glamorous New York life, and thrown into the brutal, freezing Kolyma labor camps in Siberia. Think about that whiplash. From Carnegie Hall, straight to a gold mine in the Gulag. Now, lucky for Theremin, I guess, his brain was just too valuable to waste in a freezing mine. So he gets transferred to what the Soviets called a sharashka. This was basically a secret research bureau staffed entirely by imprisoned scientists. They were kept alive on one brutal condition: invent exactly what the state demands. And the secret police demanded that Theremin build an undetectable, unpowered listening device, or face the darkest of consequences. Section 3. The physics of a ghost. Forced into a corner to achieve the literal impossible, Theremin completely rewrote the rules of surveillance. All right, let's break down how this actually worked, because the science here is genius. Theremin created what's called a passive resonant cavity. Here's the play-by-play. Step 1. Soviet operators parked in an unmarked van out on the street would beam a 330 megahertz radio wave directly at the embassy wall. Step 2. Inside that wooden Great Seal hanging in the study, a microscopic metallic membrane would vibrate just from the sound waves of the ambassador's voice. Step 3. Those tiny vibrations minutely altered the shape of a small metal cavity behind it, which then bounced the radio wave back out to the street van carrying the conversation with it. It only powered on and transmitted sound when it was illuminated by that invisible Soviet beam from the outside. Just like Peter Wright, the MI5 tech who finally cracked it realized it was not a radio transmitter. It was completely invisible. Because it was literally just a specially shaped little metal cavity with a membrane and an antenna rod. No battery,
no wires, which meant there was absolutely nothing for Western electronic detection sweeps to find. It was basically a passive mirror for radio waves that could speak. A total ground-up conceptual breakthrough.
Section 4. The United Nations Reveal. Now, once the US and UK finally discovered the thing hiding inside that wooden seal back in 1952, you'd think they'd immediately call out the Soviets on the world stage, right? Well, not exactly.
They kept it incredibly secret. As you can see on this timeline, they originally found the ghost signal in 51 and pulled the physical device out of the wall in 52. But they kept their mouths entirely shut about it for 8 whole years. Why? Because they were waiting for the absolute perfect moment to play their trump card. And that moment arrived in May 1960, when the Soviets shot down a US U-2 spy plane piloted by Gary Powers. The Soviet premier, Nikita Khrushchev, was publicly humiliating the US over their espionage tactics. So the US needed a devastating counterpunch.
Which sets the stage for the United Nations. In the autumn of 1960, American Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. stood right up in front of the UN General Assembly, effectively dismantled Soviet propaganda, and literally opened up the wooden Great Seal on the world stage. He revealed the thing to a completely stunned global audience, proving that, yeah, while the US might have been spying from the skies, the Soviets had been deeply spying from inside America's most secure diplomatic sanctuaries for almost a decade.
Section 5. The Modern Legacy. Now, it's a wild piece of history, sure, but the story of the thing definitely does not end in the Cold War, because in fact, a piece of this technology is sitting right in your pocket right now. First off, this single wooden carving forced a total redesign of global security. Because of Leon Theremin's genius, intelligence agencies had to invent the SIF, the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility. Every highly classified military and intelligence room operating today is heavily shielded with thick metal specifically to block out hostile passive interrogation. And it's directly because of the terrifying threat model opened up by that wooden eagle. But here is the absolute mic drop. That exact same passive resonant cavity physics, the stuff pioneered by Theremin in a freezing Soviet prison, is the foundational blueprint for modern RFID technology. Think about it. Your tap-to-pay credit cards, the microchips in your passport, hotel key cards, those annoying retail anti-theft tags, toll transponders on your car, they all work by using an external beam to temporarily power up a completely passive chip. It's the exact same principle as the Soviet van powering up the Great Seal bug. So the biggest takeaway from this explainer is kind of mind-blowing. A tool of extreme Cold War paranoia literally gave birth to the conveniences of our modern life. That daily tap-to-pay technology we use at the coffee shop without a second thought, it was born from the tragic imprisonment of a musical genius, a guy who was forced to build the ultimate weapon of deception just to survive. Every single time you tap your card, you are using the ghost in the embassy. And it really makes you wonder, what impossible, secret technologies are being cooked up behind closed doors right now that are going to become the everyday conveniences of our future?